Are we good to go then, James?
We're good to go, yes, leader.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Cabinet meeting on the afternoon of 9th of February 2021. This is our last Cabinet meeting as Northamptonshire County Council, so
we're good to go,
that brings to the end. Can I just ask if everybody will stay?
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Cabinet meeting on the afternoon of 9th of February 2021.
Getting some feedback
this
there.
is our last Cabinet meeting.
That was James. I'm going to keep you on mute, James.
Brings to the end.
Sorry,
Can I just ask if everybody
it sounds as if someone has YouTube running in the background.
On the afternoon of 9th of February 2021. Getting some feedback there.
Right. Okay, we'll start again. So welcome and good afternoon to our last Cabinet meeting on the afternoon of 9th February 2021. We're running live on YouTube, as we've just heard. So if we could keep everybody on mute, please, unless you're invited to speak. And we'll go straight on with the meeting. So we have no apologies. Notifications of requests from members of the public to address the meeting. I understand we have John Shepherd on one of the later items, and if John's not with us now, we'll bring him in a little while. So item 3, minutes of the meeting held in public on 10th of November. Cabinet, are we happy to agree the minutes of those meetings? Sorry,
Agreed.
thank
Agreed.
you. Item 4, declarations of interests by councillors, if there are any. Cabinet, are there any declarations of interests that aren't recorded that we need to lay down this afternoon?
No.
Thank you. Item 5, announcements. I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of former County Councillor Brian Binley, who was a County Councillor up until, I believe, 2009. And we did lower the flag at half-mast to acknowledge Brian's passing. But I'm sure we can say, and there are a couple of other members we need to mention at our full council meeting next week. So we'll do a proper job then on behalf of those members that are no longer with us. As I said, this is the last meeting of Cabinet, and again we'll reference this at the full council meeting next week, but I just want to thank everybody from the officers and the members for all of their hard work over the last few years to get the council to where it is now. And when we talk about finance, the finance report, we'll see exactly how far we have actually come in quite a short space of time, and the work and dedication and pain and angst, I have to say, that's gone in to get us where we are now needs to be acknowledged, and I'm sure there'll be a few opportunities to do that as we come to the close of the end of the County Council. Also, just wanted to reference the response to COVID again, and the way the system in Northamptonshire has been working together is testament to the partnership. Councillor Morris with his oversight board on a Thursday morning, and the member briefings from what I've picked up have gone down really, really well, and it's really good to see Northamptonshire at the top of some of those league tables in terms of the vaccinations. And again, it's really good to see that system locally working really, really well. And we thank all the volunteers and everybody in the communities that continue to respond. And I'm really proud of what Northamptonshire is achieving in response to the COVID crisis. And I really hope we can continue in that vein. I just wanted to add also, I've only had Councillor Strachan and Councillor Stamborough indicate they'll be speaking on the items as we go through today. So the first item, we go to the reports, is item 6, is the Revenue Finance Report. And Councillor Longley, if you could introduce this item, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, this is, with the exception of the full council, the last meeting that we'll have. You've got to remember today that I'll be reporting on period 9. But that's what the papers will show you. We are actually well advanced into period 11. So the items moved on since this report. I'll come to that in a moment. It's very pleasing. We're looking for a forecast, year-end forecast in period 9 of just 16.6 million underspend, which is very good indeed. Now that's been boosted quite significantly, and I'll get Barry to give you some of the details of that in a moment, but that's gone up quite considerably from the last forecast, and is, in my opinion, likely to go up yet again by the year end. We shall see that. I'm always very cautious about making improved predictions, because they have a habit of coming around and biting you. But so far, those figures are very unlikely to be any less than we see them. What is important there as well is to note, and I'm talking really to the new unitaries, is that we're still forecasting an under collection in the rates of 18 million, which will of course go on to the new unitary councils because of the way they're collected. And I believe they're to be paid off over 3 years, but of course some of the collections will take place. And the other item of significance is on page 24, and that is showing where the reserves, again, is being predicted at this point in time, or was being predicted at this point in time, of reserves of 60 million at the year end. And that again is likely to go up as this time of year, of course, you're emptying all the boxes out, all the cupboards, it's the provisions and things like that, and to see hopefully they'll go in the right direction. We think they probably will, so we're looking at that maybe go up a little bit as well. So I'm pretty pleased with that outcome, I've got to say, and it's all thanks to very capable 151 officers of Addy and Duncan in the early stages, and then Barry well, I'm not sure how long you've been here, Barry. It seemed to have been forever, but and both for the Northeast for some odd reason. So there you go. Anyway, that's the report, folks. Anybody got any questions? I'll be pleased to take them.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Stamborough asked to speak. Chris.
Thank you very much, Matt. So speaking on behalf of Scrutiny, as one of the Scrutiny Vice Chairs, we had a meeting last week, had a look at this report, and I was asked to come here and make a few points, which I hope won't be in any way controversial, and I'll just rattle through them. So just looking at recommendation 5 to start with, which talks about some delegations to approve any reserve movements or bad debt write-off. Absolutely fine. It's got to, it might have to happen, so delegations are good. It would be helpful, I think, if Scrutiny was kept informed of any such things should they arise via whatever channels are deemed appropriate. And likewise, as Malcolm pointed out, this is the period 9 report. We're now in period 11. I'm assuming there will be internal documentation being prepared on periods 10, 11 and 12. Again, I think it would be helpful to keep Scrutiny informed, perhaps by sharing some of that documentation too, if that were possible. Looking at the next page, there is flagged up the fact that we've got quite a large amount of money set aside for the recovery phase of the virus, which is good, because no doubt it will be needed. There is a worry, I think, that if we don't spend it, government might seek to recover it. And we were told at Scrutiny that the terms and conditions don't say that unspent amounts need to be paid back, but that's not the same as saying there will be no attempt to recover them. So I'm sure that that's something that's on the radar, and it would be useful just to get some satisfaction on that, I think. There's a paragraph 5.28 talks about net staffing underspends in CFN, Children First Northamptonshire, of £500,000, and also refers to other costs that are upset by underspends due to high level of vacancies over and above those being covered by agency staff. There was a concern that we mustn't let high levels of vacancies impact on service delivery in any service area, but of all, children is probably the number one where that shouldn't happen. Paragraph 5.65 refers to the most significant risk remains accurately forecasting independent care costs circa £179 million over the latter months of the financial year and the further effects of the second wave of COVID. Those costs, should they be more than we expect them to be, will I suspect mainly fall on the new councils. But I would hope, and Scrutiny would hope, that appropriate checks are being kept to ensure that we've got those under control. And finally, in paragraph 5.87, talking about forecast income losses, one of which is parking, £1.1 million. And Scrutiny was sort of keen to highlight that what we don't know there is how likely such reductions in income are going to be permanent because of changes in the behaviour of consumers and as to whether they come into town centres or not. And we've had a year of doing alternative things, and that it has to be carefully monitored. I would, if I may, Matt, just raise one other thing, not as a Scrutiny representative. Paragraph 5.5, members might remember that in regards to library services, there were some discussions at the end of the last financial year about carrying over an underspend on the book fund, and that was carried over, which was really good news. But we're told in this paragraph there is no longer a requirement for the book fund carry forward from 2019-20, and I'd be interested to know why there is no longer such a requirement. People are still reading books, libraries still need books. It was welcome that that amount was carried forward, and it's not really good news that it's now no longer going to be spent on books in our libraries. So perhaps someone could address that. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Okay, thank you, Chris. So Malcolm, do you want to tackle any of those points?
Yeah, sure.
Before Cabinet come back with any comments on this report?
Yeah, sure. I'd be pleased to. Well, let's deal with the first one, write-offs. Well, you'll know my view on that, Chris, very well. I mean, I'm always you go to a prudent approach with write-offs. It's you don't want anything coming around and biting you down the line, and so we would always look to bad debt being the obvious one, and we've dealt with that over the years, as you will well know. A lot of these items, it's a shame really because of the COVID. What a lot of people won't know is that Chris, myself, and Julie and Mick, we used to meet up on a monthly basis, and we'd go through most of these items with Barry, and it's a shame we've not been able to do that with this COVID. But there you go. The second thing is you sort of keep Scrutiny involved as say period 9. Well, I'm very pleased to, Chris, as you know, and I would say that it's likely to be an improving position, not a declining one. But at this stage, I always, you've heard me say this before, so at the risk of boring you, I talk about Yogi Berra. And Yogi Berra, as some of you may know, was the old baseball player in America. And in the last few moments, his side was losing. And he's made the point that it ain't over till it's over. And that's what I would say. We're in period 11, but anything, we've got to be careful that we don't get over enthusiastic and find that something nasty happens in between. So what you're seeing there is a prudent view of the future, and will always be so until it's happened. It ain't over till it's over. COVID recovery. Well, I do hope indeed we don't have to pay it back. Whatever. We've got a pretty substantial war chest. Have had all along. I reported on it last time, you may recall, and we should be okay. It's a good war chest, and we would expect that would see us through. But let's see where we're going. Let's see if the vaccines are working. The parking risk, you spoke of a loss so far and what's going to happen in the future. Well, anyway, in a budget, you're always taking a view of the future, and you do your best to judge what you can. And your judgment there will be equally as good as most, I would have thought. So any good ideas, let's have them. I don't think there's anything else there that is significant, and I'll very pleased to pass this report to anybody else who wants to make a comment. Matt.
Thank you, Malcolm. So Lizzie is just going to make a point on the library fund, I think. So 2 seconds.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Malcolm, and Barry and the rest of the finance team and everybody else involved. I think this is a very positive report, and people should be congratulated for that. Just on the library perspective, the last year, as we know, has seen everything change, and that includes the libraries and the way we deliver services. And I think it's worth noting, particularly for Councillor Stanborough, is that the demand is changing, as you would expect, and People are really accessing more of the stuff now rather than actually physical books. And we will, by diverting our processes and procedures to accommodate that, and you'll see much more on YouTube and different methodologies going forward. So it's not as negative as it would appear. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. So I'll just make some comments on this report, if I may. Just to acknowledge what a superb effort this has been with the finances, led, you know, by the officers, by Barry, and going back with Ian Duncan, as Malcolm said, that sort of set the foundation for where we are now. We've come an awful long way, and that needs to be recognised, how difficult this job has been. But we've had discipline, you know, we've tried to work really hard on the culture over the last 2 or 3 years, and I think that's borne out into the report that we've got in front of us now. We've not, you know, we're not quite there yet, as Malcolm said, but we're very close, and I'm really proud of the effort that you know, the members and the officers and everybody, and we've got to acknowledge the commissioners as well, that everybody has put into this report, and it is excellent work, and especially in the context of COVID, and when you hear of the difficulties a lot of other councils are struggling with up and down the country, to put the recovery in over the last 2 or 3 years and deal with COVID and still show that we've got the discipline and the wherewithal to deliver this underspend on top of what we've already done previously is brilliant performance. I also want to acknowledge the quality of the report we've got. It was one of the intentions going back to improve how we report monthly on the finance reports, and I think we've got a good example of best practice before us today. I think the report is very transparent. It describes every area really well. It talks about the implications of COVID on each of the directorates, explains very definitively where the COVID funding from government has come in and how that's been used, and what we've got left to hopefully bequeath the 2 new unitaries. And again, the reserves position, as Malcolm said, is looking really good, and hopefully that will improve as we carry on towards unitary. So I'm really pleased, really satisfied with the work that's gone in so far. I just want to also recognise in there it references the children's services. I know Councillor Baker is going to come in a second. You know, recognises that what we did with the half-term meal voucher going back to October, and we continued that over Christmas, and the coming half term next week, we've got things in place to do that. So I'm really proud that we acted quickly and got that in place as well. But overall, I just want to recognise how far we've come, the excellent work that's gone into this, and the fact we're not quite there yet, but when we close the door on NCC, we will have done so and left it in a very good financial place. So, Councillor Bacon.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to address Councillor Stamborough's concern over the service delivery and the staff vacancies, and assure him that the children's team are working exceptionally hard, not only to cover any staff vacancies there may be, but also to cover difficulties during COVID. They have actually pulled everything out of the stops and done an enormously fantastic effort to do work as normal and get up the Children's Trust and set it up and get it running, and also not keep everything going as well as we can during these times. There is no issue as far as lack of staff is concerned on service delivery at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Any further comments from Cabinet? Are we happy to approve the report? Thank you.
Agreed.
So we'll move on to item 7, the capital finance report. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, it's pretty straightforward to read it. The forecast year end is 75 million spend. That'll be well within budget. Now, typically, the capital expenditure goes under budget, which is not necessarily what we want, but it's certainly financial terms, it's an improvement, but it's a lot of these items we do want done, and a lot of productivity items are usually involved in capital. There's a lot of detail in this one, and 2 pages of it almost, But the headline is it's 75 million. It'll be there or thereabouts. It'll be, if anything, it'll be better than that. And the details are in the report. I don't think it's the right thing to go through the detail of that here, too much of it.
Wendy, Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'm pleased to see the extension of the phase 3 works at Prince William School within the capital programme.
Chair, you can't see me, but I've got my hand up.
Yeah, well, you didn't register to speak, Danielle, so I'm not going to take any more speakers. Thank you.
I've got things I would really like to ask, if you
Danielle,
don't mind.
We've got a protocol in place, so I'm going to stick to that, given it's the last meeting. So you didn't register to speak, so I'm not going to let you in. Sorry.
So
I would deem it a big favour if you did let me speak, actually, because this is the last cabinet meeting. And I have got something really important I want to say.
Danielle, look, I'm going to stick to the rules, unfortunately. So can you send that on an email to us, and we'll do our best to deal with it. Thank you.
No, I've been asked by my constituents to raise something with you at cabinet, and they'll be on YouTube watching. So I would really like to.
I'm not having this. No, we've got a protocol in place. This is our last meeting. I want to run it as smoothly as possible, and I'm going to stick to the protocol. And we've been through it a lot of times. So thank you.
Well, I think that's very undemocratic. We're here to represent our constituents.
Can I ask that we all stay on mute, please? So, Cabinet, are we happy to agree the capital finance report?
Agreed.
Thank you. So, item 8 is the Treasury Management Strategy Update. Councillor Longley.
Yeah, fine. Thanks, thanks, Chair. Well, this is a particularly interesting report. I've got a couple of comments on this. The first is the year-end outlook for the net debt is being forecast at 462, and that's been coming down quite nicely. And but long way to go in the new unitaries, in my opinion. What is interesting there is of all things, is the maturity profile. And for those of you that are interested in these things, that's table 3. And the significance of that is that there's still a little bit quite high numbers. 24 million was paid off this year. That's quite a lot, and the same for next year. But after 2022, the requirement of paying for the next 30 or 40 years is very low indeed. And that is an absolute golden opportunity for the new unitaries to either reduce debt to an all-time low, or indeed decide on another course of action. But it's a most excellent position that they will find themselves in within the next year or so. But I would put a bit of a caution in this, is if one looks at the interest rate forecast out that's in this report, it carries on forecasting 0.1% as the base rate for, and I just get the feel now that we're not far away, maybe a year or two, not quite sure, that inflation will begin to rise, and so will interest rates. So the amount of debt will become significant, but a great maturity profile available. But the word of warning to the unitaries is be aware that interest rates will rise sooner or later. They might even go down slightly short term, but longer term they will rise. And everybody should be much aware of that. We've been quite fortunate in that regard. And so I think that's I think that's it, Chair, for this report. Unless anybody has questions, of course.
Thank you, Malcolm. I just want to echo everything you said. The Treasury management, along with the financial performance over the last few years, I think has been exemplary. And again, acknowledging some of the decisions that were taken. And I know we've got Barry on the line, but particularly noting, Ian Duncan and that decision around changing the strategy or, refinancing at that particular time has borne dividends and will pay us off well into the future. So just to acknowledge that again. So Cabinet, are we happy to agree the report?
Matt, I'm ready
Agreed.
to speak on this one.
Are you, Chris? Sorry.
Thank you very much. So just before you agree it then, I just wanted to make reference to the Appendix A, which is the economic commentary from our advisors, Link Asset Services, and congratulate them on their braveness, I think, because time and time again in the report, they point out how they're not in line with many of their colleagues in the financial industry as regards to their views. They say things like, we are now more optimistic than the OBR and the Bank of England. In contrast to what most other forecasters appear to have assumed, we are not convinced that the COVID-19 crisis will significantly reduce the economy's supply capacity. The danger is that fiscal policy is tightened too soon and will to fill a perceived hole in the public finances caused by the crisis that never materializes. Unlike the financial markets, we do not think the bank will raise rates in the next 5 years. Bank rate may not rise above 0.1% for about 5 years. I wonder if Malcolm agrees with them there. And then they say, we disagree with the market's expectations that bank rate will be cut into negative territory in the coming months. So a number of places there where they seem to be going out on a limb. And I just wonder how Malcolm and Barry feel about the advice they've been given in this particular report. There is one place where I definitely would agree with them, however, and is that they conclude in their final paragraph, the outlook in the US is a bit more rosy. Certainly is. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. That's great stuff. I read a lot of reports, and I'm sure Barry and Teresa does. I read lot of reports. I'm one of these sad people that actually enjoy reading these sort of reports, and some I agree with, some I don't. I will read this report, and I'll make my own mind up on that eventually. And now I've already told you what that is. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I'll do it again, but Cabinet, we have agreed the report. Cabinet, we agree the report.
Agreed.
Thank you. So we move on to item 9. That's Lizzie, the corporate performance report.
Thank you, Matt. You on mute, yeah. Right, so this is the last performance report that will come to Northamptonshire County Council's Cabinet meeting. And it's such a different year due to the COVID pandemic that literally everything in this report has been affected. So I'm not going to spend hours going through everything, but what I will do is just give you some highlights. If you go to the first section, which is adults, you'll see there an increase in new requests for service to adult social care. Numbers in the first part of the year are impacted by discharges from hospitals in March, resulting in placements which are not yet included in social care numbers until later in the year. There has actually been a 5.3% increase in performance of people not requiring long-term services following crisis intervention or reablement compared to the previous quarter, which is obviously worth noting. If we go on to children's social care, this period marks a crossover between the County Council and the launch of the Children's Trust last November 2020. So that'll obviously be impacted on the figures. The number of children in child protection plans in place at the end of December was 745. And this is actually a decrease of 8%, 67 in total on the previous quarter. A second quarter in a row, a reduction that has been recorded after a generally increasing trend in 2019-20. Obviously, I urge caution on this statistic because of COVID, those referrals might not have been placed as they would normally be. Going on again to education, which is on page 15. There have been less school or early years provider inspections this year compared to previous years. And this has resulted in little change in those educational providers who are either good or outstanding over the past year. Moving on to place, the council has repaired a similar number of defects, as you will see, this quarter as in the previous quarter, and have also repaired over 4,000 more than at the same point last year. Despite this increase, the number of outstanding defects has increased this quarter. Moving on to waste. The metrics on household waste this year are obviously very different, mostly due to significantly different disposal habits during the first lockdown period, with significant peaks in April. The latest data shows a similar level to what might be considered normal disposable habits to previous. If we move on to public health, there is no Q3 data available at the time of writing due to the time frame of when the data becomes available. And these are programs such as smoking cessation, health checks, and drug and alcohol treatment. Going on to corporate workforce, the number of complaints in the past 2 quarters have been higher than they have been previously. And that's mainly because we've invited more feedback about the new responsibilities assumed by the council in response to the pandemic, and also the introduction of some new services, for example, e-scooters, which has prompted additional feedback in both a positive and obviously in the initial stages a negative way. Our website has been an important part of providing COVID-19 related information to the public. The most recent quarter had just over 91,000 visits to our COVID-19 specific webpage, which is an enormous volume of traffic. And then finally, if I was to highlight on the workforce side, the significant drop in full-time equivalent and headcount, which you'll see is mainly as a result of staff transferring to Northamptonshire's Children's Trust in November. So all in all, whilst this is the last report, and obviously there has been huge challenges with the COVID pandemic, there is certainly some areas of note for your interest. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lizzie. So Councillor Bob Scott has got his hand raised. I'll let you in, Bob, as your leader of the opposition. Bob, if you wanted to comment.
Thank you, Matt. And that is observing the rules we had agreed some time ago. So thank you for that. I just wanted to raise a few items. Impact 2 on page 10, the indices of multiple deprivation. I'm looking at the huge gap between Corby at 70, Northampton at 105 and South Northampton at 312. The figures for Corby seem to be lower than previously. And we've said for some time that there needs to be local strategies targeting the worst areas, and Corby certainly amongst the worst, or is the worst area, although there are pockets within Northampton and Wellingborough. You know, it's a targeted approach that we've been talking about earlier in the year and previous years, and that doesn't seem to have resulted in a great improvement in terms of the citizens of Corby. On page 15, the children's permanent exclusions is an item I've raised many times before, because in previous years we've seen a pattern of the number of exclusions dropping as we approach Q4, with the suspicion that children are kept in school just to get the funding, then increasing in quarters 1, 2 and 3. The figures for the last 2 quarters showing an alarming increase in permanent exclusions. Being excluded in a non-COVID environment is one thing, but being excluded in a COVID environment is surely very detrimental to the child concerned. With the number of school closures in the period, why is that jump so high? Where are these children going, and are they all accounted for? Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. I'll ask Lizzie just to respond and then open up to any comments from Cabinet. 3, 2, 1.
Councillor Scott, I'm afraid I only heard snippets of those questions. So I did hear the first bit about multiple deprivation on page 10. I wonder whether Lucy Whiteman, maybe you heard more than I heard, Lucy? If you'd like to respond, you didn't hear either. There was something at the end on education. I wonder whether Councillor Baker heard that. If not, Councillor Scott, would you mind emailing those comments? As I'm really sorry, I just didn't hear them, that you were coming in and out on the reception.
So Lucy, you were nodding your head then.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I had the same issue from a point of view of the connection, but I'm happy if they're typed in the chat to comment as well, if that's helpful. If you don't want to wait for an email, I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay, let's try and do that if that's okay. Okay, colleagues, are there any other comments from Cabinet? I know it's difficult in the COVID context to compare, you know, the quarterly performance. There are some issues like Councillor Scott mentioned about school closures and exclusions within the COVID context, which are, you know, very valid points. But I think if Bob, if you could put those points to Lucy, I'm sure Lucy will do her best to respond. So anything from you extra, Lizzie? You okay with that? Yeah. Okay, Cabinet, we happy to agree the reports?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 11, which is the West Midlands Rail Limited Governance Evolution. So that's Councillor Smithers. Councillor Smithers.
Thank you, Leader. So in line with the principles of devolving responsibility for local railway services away from Whitehall, a partnership was formed to work with the Department of Transport in specifying local rail services in the West Midlands. This is done through a limited company, West Midland Rail Limited, and it also has 14 local authority members, each appointing a director, 7 representing the West Midland Metropolitan Authorities and 7 surrounding county and unitary authorities. This includes Northamptonshire, and although there is less influence over the Northampton line as part of the route to London than more the local services, this gives us and the new West Northamptonshire Council a seat at another table to influence things. Since 2019, the West Midlands metropolitan area has gained an elected mayor, and rail services are one of his areas of interest. However, there has been a danger of the mayor having a different agenda to the consortium of local authorities. So to mitigate against this problem, the proposal is that the mayor should become the chair of the West Midlands Rail Limited. To avoid upsetting the balance between the 7 metropolitan and the 7 shire authorities, the proposal is that they would be a non-voting chair. This would be supported by 2 vice chairs, one from the metropolitan and one from the shire counties. In accordance with the WMRL Articles of Association, this needs agreeing by a special resolution of the members, hence this being brought to Cabinet today, and agree at an extraordinary meeting of the WMLR board. So Cabinet, I'm asking you to agree the recommendations in this report.
Agreed, Chair.
Agreed.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. We've got Councillor Strachan registered to speak on this. Councillor Strachan.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just a question. Since the West Coast Main Line, East and West Rail and HS2 are within the boundaries of West Northampton Council, could the Cabinet member tell us which authority will inherit the board membership position on West Mid Rail Limited? Thank you.
Do that, Jason.
Winston, as I said in the presentation, I think that would be the West Unitary Authority coming in over, obviously, Northamptonshire County Council when we cease to exist on the 31st of March.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Graham.
Okay, thank you. Cabinet, are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. It was remiss of me. I jumped on. We didn't do item 10. So we'll go back to item 10, the commissioning for Bright Futures joint contract framework for autistic people with complex needs, age 14 years up. Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. You'll all have seen the report in front of you. A really good example of some joint working here between the commissioning groups, Adult Social Care and the Children's Trust, in order to help find and fill the gaps between the services that often happen between sort of 14 and 18 and above. And this, I think, will go from 14 till about 23 for complex autistic needs. Something that we definitely need here, I think, because they're very complex young people that need some very good help, which they will get from this. So the anticipated contract spend is about 20 million over 4 years. And it'll be year one will be this contract, and then there'll be a pool budget year two from all the partners. So a really, really good piece of work. And obviously this has been through all the shadow governance processes and also has been before, I believe we've had the full reports on before, I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, it has been through the governance process, and obviously it will continue to go forward in the new unitary authorities. And we are basically setting this piece of work up to go forward into those 2 new unitaries. It's a complex piece of work, but I think you'll agree, given everything that's been going on in the county recently and the country with COVID, etc., this is a remarkable piece of work, and everyone involved with it should be applauded. So I recommend the paper before us and ask for Cabinet's approval. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Councillor Scott, you got your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. We welcome this report. It's a pity COVID has got in the way, and that's taken time away because the sooner this gets into being, the better. We've got to wait another year and a bit for it yet to come to fruition, which is sad, but we're very supportive that it's taking place. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any comments to add, Councillor Morris?
Yes, just to echo that, there has been quite a severe delay due to COVID, as there have been in many of the services. And so there will have to be quite a pickup of this, I think, as and when it comes online. So, and I'm sure the teams are more than up to it. But yes, it has been a shame that it's been delayed. But I think the work it will do will be very well received. Quite often children fall through the gaps in our services across the piece, and this is one very important piece of work to help pick up some of that work between key partners. So I thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add as well, I'm the Cabinet member on the West Shadow Executive for Adults, and this did come through our Shadow Executive a couple of weeks ago, and we really welcome it, welcome the way in which the system is working together to procure and commission services. And I know there's another paper coming on Friday to our Shadow Executive around us all commissioning together for the ICANN piece of work as well. So that's a real good progressive way of working, and I welcome it. So Cabinet, are we happy to agree the report?
Chair, sorry if I could just step in at that point. Just to point out, I think there's a small typo at the end of the recommendation, which I think should read for autistic individuals over the age of 14 years.
Yeah, thank you, James. So Cabinet, just to note that point, and we're happy to agree that.
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, well, let's move on to item 12, declaring land surplus requirements at Buckton Fields. So we've got a member of public, well, it's Councillor John Shepherd, registered to speak, and I did see John tip in on the participants list. So James, could you ask John to address Cabinet, please?
Yeah.
Chairman, thank you very much. Very briefly, I'm a local district council member for Boughton. Buckton Fields has been a feature of existence here for decades, frankly. And I'd just like to make an oblique point and ask Cabinet to note recent instructions agreed to be undertaken by officers in relation to early years provision. It's been a curious mystery to me why early years has not been really properly provided for throughout the gestation of the Buckton Fields development. In 2013, the first 106 provided some 650,000 for early years. The second 106 in 2018, we're going to end up with over 2 million for early years in land, in cash, and against the background of county council owned land. So the fact that we get to the position now, so many years later, where the County Council could, in my submission, have provided early years on its own land and hasn't, that's odd. Anyway, everybody accepts that the best place for early years is within the curtilage of Buckton Fields School. And yesterday, at a meeting with your Chief Exec and leader, it was agreed that officers would urgently look at a recent proposition to incorporate early years at Buckton Fields School. It involves altering the current arrangements on land currently leased to the school and on land owned by Bloor, the developers. So it's not trespassing upon County Council land, but it does involve quite a tricky renegotiation of land ownership and planning to accommodate early years at Buckton Fields School. However, it seems to me we do have the will to do that. We do have the funding to do that. All relevant parties have been approached and no objections yet identified. And I'm pleased and delighted with that outcome. And I simply invite Council, Cabinet, in relation to the provision at early years in Buckton Fields, to note that agreement made with officers yesterday that there would be urgent feasibility study, hopefully completed within the life of your current authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shepherd. And just to give you a bit of assurance, at our Cabinet pre-meeting this morning, I did talk about the meeting we had yesterday and that proposal that indeed, as you say, is being taken away and being looked at, and hopefully it will come back, as you say, before the lifespan of the council. So I'm happy that that's progressed, and hopefully, you know, we'll get a good outcome. And of course, we all want to see the provision, a good provision of early years at Buckton Fields, because these community services are vital for a functioning community. But I'm satisfied, and as I said, I relayed that to Cabinet this morning. So hopefully we will get a good resolution. So I'll ask Councillor Smithers to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. The paper seeks to clarify a decision that was made by Cabinet on the 10th of January back in 2017. The earlier Cabinet decision authorised that the Westview Farm and associated land forming the western part of the development site known as Buckton Fields be declared surplus to requirements. The remaining elements of Buckton Fields Zoo, Phase 3, comprises of Westview Farm, but also an element of land from the Rectory Farm, also shown on the plan attached in your report that's in front of you today. The Rectory farmland falls within the western part of the development site, but as it was not referenced by name in the original decision, this report seeks to clarify the original assumption that the land is included within the earlier decision. So I'm just asking Cabinet to approve the recommendations in this report.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. Cabinet, we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 13, which is the Local Code of Corporate Governance. Councillor.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to present this report. It's an update basically to the current Local Code of Corporate Governance, and you are asked to note this update. Just by way of background, the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, CIPFA, and the Society of Local Authority Chief Executives, SOLAS, published a framework document for corporate governance in local government in April 2016. We have had our own document since 2010, but part of our role in working with commissioners and a part of our improvement journey, we wanted to look at this document and present it ready for use, implementation, and possibly slight amends when we both go to our respective North and West unitaries. So the council is responsible for ensuring that its business is conducted in accordance with the law and proper standards, and that public money is protected accounted for and used economically, efficiently and effectively. And effective leadership is at the heart of good governance. There's all sorts of really valuable stuff in here about good corporate governance and leadership, really powerful. And I would urge everybody to read this document. It is quite lengthy, there's 20 pages plus, but if you were to go to, for example, page 5, where the guidance on behaving with integrity, if you then move to the right, there is a column there which then identifies all the documents that you can refer to look at how that should be listed within the Constitution. So yeah, I'm really very pleased to be able to present this to yourselves today, and it's leaving a good legacy for the successor authorities, and I'm sure you'd agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. As far as I'm concerned, this is a straightforward piece of governance, as Lizzie explained, albeit important. Cabinet, is there any comments on this? Are we happy to agree the report?
Agreed.
Agreed.
So item 14, the notification of urgent decision report. So this has got my name on it. So basically, an urgent decision had to be taken around the procurement to provide the lease at Royal Pavilion, Forsome House Road, Malton Park, to put the large testing site in place for Northampton. It was obviously done very quickly, and rightly so, and it's up and running and functioning very well. But as a part of governance, it needs to come back to the next relevant meeting, as is outlined at 3.3 in the report. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm very pleased to put this report to Cabinet, and we've got Councillor Stamborough registered to speak.
Thank you very much, Matt. Yeah, couple of questions and a bit of a clarification maybe. So absolutely support that we did this and that we found premises for a mass vaccination centre. Absolutely the right thing to do, let me say that at the outset. Just wondering if we could maybe hear how the premises were located and who located them. How many different venues were considered, or was this the only one? And just some clarification on the cost. We're told, I think at paragraph 8 in financial implications, that £568,000 is the total value of the lease. Then we're told at paragraph 4.1b that it's a 2-year lease with a rental value of £10,833 per month, which only comes to £260,000 over 24 lease, 2 years. We've got capital costs of £300,000, but even when you add those together, they don't come to £568,000. Whilst we're being told that the cost is recoverable, can we have confirmation of what the actual cost of the lease is, and whether the difference is the £300,000 capital cost, and also confirmation that we are recovering that in full from the NHS, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Of course, good questions. I'll ask the Chief Exec in a minute if I can. I'll just bring Bob in and then bring the Chief Exec after. Thank you, Chris.
I did have my hand up, and then I took it down, Matt, because Chris has asked exactly the same questions that I'd listed down to ask. So I'm happy with.
I'll ask Teresa. Thanks, Bob. Chief Exec, if you could just.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, happy to try and answer some of those, Chris, but I'm afraid I will have to come back to you when I check with our property team, because we did have to work at speed. My understanding at the time, but again, I'll check with colleagues in NHS, because they may have trawled through different options, was the building was chosen by the NHS, not by us. And we came in and supported them to do this rapidly. We had to have the building completed and ready to open for the 1st of December, if I remember correctly. So we really did work at speed. And I must say that colleagues in property department, especially James Aldridge, was absolutely amazing in how he turned that building around so rapidly. So much so that NHS colleagues have acknowledged him on many occasions now publicly for his work to do that. the building, as I say, wasn't chosen by us, it was chosen by them. It shows a really good use of public partnership with the NHS and the council working together to deliver this building at pace, and to have it open and operating as it is so effectively now, with so many people going through it currently. So I can't answer how many buildings the NHS looked at to identify this particular one, but we were asked to support them in getting this building leased and ready, and we had the expertise to be able to do that a lot quicker than they could. So we stepped in to do that on the agreement that they would refund in full all costs. So that does answer one of your questions. Yes, all costs will be refunded in full.
Thank you, Teresa. Councillor Morris, did you have any comment on this?
Only to echo what Teresa said about the property team. They've done an amazing job. And given that they were asked to get this done in record time, as Teresa said, I think it was within a week or possibly 2 weeks, possibly even less. It's quite remarkable what they've managed to do, and testament to the great people that work there, particularly James Aldridge that Teresa already mentioned. And worth noting that how well can't help but mention how well the vaccination programme is going well through there as well. And a mention for all the people that are working all the hours that God sends to get as many people through there as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, could I just clarify one thing? One of my colleagues has just helped me here. They said James Aldridge to say that the 568,000 includes business rates and other running costs. That's why it doesn't add up straight if you just add the annual cost of the lease.
Thank you, Teresa. I've got Councillor Smithers like to come in.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo the thanks to James Aldridge and Graham Kane as well for getting this sorted as quickly as possible. And one point I would also like to sort of bring through, I mean, money shouldn't be an issue here. I mean, the governance is here in Northamptonshire County Council. We've proven that over the last 24 months how this authority can manage. And I just think, whilst Councillor Stanborough, I know you're sort of watching the money there, and rightfully so. I think there's a bigger picture here. We needed to get this centre out. We needed the vaccination hub in Northamptonshire, and what a fantastic story this is for this authority. You know, we're topping the league tables there. You know, we couldn't ask for a better outcome, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smithers. And I was just going to make that point. I think that foundation was laid in terms of how well the partnership has responded, and when we were all asked to find these places, they're all done very quickly, and that is sort of borne out in the numbers and league tables that we see that Northamptonshire is right at the top, and that's really good to see. So I'm really pleased and very proud again of you know, how we've all worked and how the partnership is working together. So Cabinet, are we happy to agree the report?
Yes.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. So let's move on to item 15. It's the Integrated Children's Services Public Health and CCG update on progress to date, and Councillor Morris is presenting this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You'll have all seen the paper, so I won't go into any great detail, but again, a very, very good example of how joint working has moved on in this county over the last 2 to 3 or 4 years. This is a brilliant integrated system that involves public health and our CCGs working together to provide this very, very important service. Obviously, again, sadly, there has been a bit of a delay to this service coming to us because of the pandemic, but and the new go live date is the 1st of April 22, which seems a long way away, but we will be there in no time at all. And it's going to be really interesting. So we've all had a paper on this, and the main reason for bringing this back is because of the delay. So in terms of the money, it's always worth mentioning the size of these contracts because they are significant. So at the moment, there's 2 sources of funding, as I said: public health, which is going to put in about £12 million, and the CCGs, which are going to put in about £18 million. So a very significant service, one that we definitely welcome here in the county. and which will carry on doing some great work long after we've gone and the 2 new unitaries are established. It really, really will be a benchmark piece of work, I think, going forward into both unitaries. So I present the paper to you, Cabinet and Chair, and ask for your approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Are there any comments from Cabinet colleagues? Okay, thank you. And just to welcome this.
Sorry, can I just, sorry, my hand raising thing seems to have failed. So I apologise. I just wanted to say that this is one of the pieces of work that we were really excited about earlier, and it's just a shame, as Councillor Morris pointed out, that this hasn't been able to come to fruition as soon as we hoped, but it is putting in place some really good services for our young people, which is what we all pledged to do, to put back in things that we wanted to have up for our young people. And I just wanted to draw attention to the figures here. We are putting in specialist services for 185,756 young people in Northamptonshire by this programme. And it's a very significant piece of work, and I'm really pleased that it's coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. So Cabinet, are we happy to agree the reports?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So we need now to resolve to go into exempt business. So James, do I need to make a resolution that we go into that public are removed from the meeting?
You do, Chair. Of course, if it's possible for Cabinet to agree the private minutes without discussion, then they can be agreed in public session. If there was any need to discuss the detail of private minutes, that would need to be dealt with in private session. But at the appropriate point, you do need to move the formal resolution.
Okay, Cabinet, are we happy to agree to accept the minutes without discussion?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. We'll do that. So we'll move on to item 16. So Cabinet, do we resolve to move into private session?
Matt, could I make a comment? I had my hand up before you made the decision.
Is that on the minutes, Bob?
It was on both papers because we only received them about half hour, 15 minutes before the meeting. They weren't on the County Council site. I looked up on that about 3/4 of an hour before the meeting. And we did email this morning. John emailed this morning asking for a copy of them.
Okay, well, I'll have to ask for a report from Democratic Services on if you weren't able to access those the pink paper.
I've since printed the copy. I don't know whether all my colleagues have, because I only printed it about 10 minutes before the meeting.
Okay.
Matt, I've not had a copy also.
Okay, James, do you want to comment on that briefly?
Certainly, Chair. I mean, in the case of the private minutes and the last report on the agenda, by definition, they weren't on the website because they weren't published, because they were exempt from publication. To pick up, as Councillor Scott said, Democratic Services were contacted by Councillor McGee earlier today with a request for those items to be sent electronically, and we responded to that as soon as we were in a position to do so, after consulting with the monitoring officer as is appropriate in these circumstances.
Okay, thank you, James. So we'll now resolve to move into private session. So Cabinet, do we agree to that?
Could you read the exact wording, please?
Okay. So in respect, but under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public will be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that if the public were present, it would be likely that exempt information to part 1 of the schedule 12A of the Act of the descriptions against each item would be disclosed to them. So Cabinet, we're happy to agree to that resolution?
Agreed.
Agreed.
So we're now in private session. So